What's going on, everyone? I've seen Black Adam, and I decided to pop on here and share my thoughts and go over a kind of brief mini review on this movie. There will be some spoilers, however, I'm not going to go into every plot detail and break down the entire movie, but if you want to go in fresh having no knowledge of what's to come, I would recommend bowing out because I will be talking about some things that happened. Full cards on the table. I do want to address the fact that A, I understand this hat makes me look like a complete doofus, but I did want to represent as much as I could, and B, I am a huge Captain Marvel, I suppose we have to call him Shazam fan these days, so I am going into this with a little bit of bias because obviously Black Adam comes from that whole universe. Just for a little reference, here you go, there's that. There's this bad boy. Oh. And I even customized a Mary Marvel from the original Shazam movie, so that shows you just how playing with a full deck of cards I am not. Anyways, let's get into the movie. So a lot of the critics out there are basically saying this movie's a pile of crap. It has a terrible Rotten Tomatoes score from the critics side. Last I checked, which was a few minutes ago, the audience score is 90%. So if you're keeping away from this movie based purely on the critical reception and not the audience reception, I would say forget it, because they're absolutely never right on the mark. They're always trying to pass trends, catch a trend, play a trend, and it never seems to work out. So I think they're used to the fact that, oh, everyone hates DC movies, everyone likes to hate on these movies. I'm going to come out with a hateful review right now just to join part of the club, and then they're just kind of on the wrong side of history. I will tell you right now, though, this isn't exactly the greatest movie ever put to film. I would say that out of the DCEU movies, which have been wildly uneven, brief history before I get to this movie, I do like the Zack Snyder Justice League. I do like Wonder Woman. I do like Shazam. I do like Aquaman. The second Suicide Squad I liked okay. I wouldn't say it's the best thing ever like a lot of people do. Man of Steel I appreciate for what it did, but it's not my favorite. Batman vs. Superman, great concept, didn't care for it. And then a couple of them I haven't even seen, like Birds of Prey. That's where I'm coming from. I love these characters. I love almost every actor associated with the DCEU. It's just the storytelling that I'm not a huge fan of. So going into this movie, it felt to me, and I don't know if this was a conscious choice or not, that they were blending Zack Snyder and James Gunn into one movie. It absolutely felt like this is a Zack Snyder moment, and then you would also be like, you know what? This is a James Gunn moment. So if they were actually trying to replicate both of those styles and merge them, I think they hit the nail on the head. I understand that want. I also am a little worried that they didn't try to go their own way and they're trying to play both sides. Not sure how that's going to land, but I personally thought it was good, and it kept a consistent feeling in this universe that it feels like they were almost ready to abandon before this movie came out. We start out with a little bit of an exposition dump in this movie, and that was probably the only part of the movie that was even remotely slow to me. As soon as everything is set up and established and we move to the modern day, there's basically no stopping this movie. It's a roller coaster. It just moves along. There's a lot of action. There's some comic relief. There's some characters that you haven't met before. In fact, almost everyone that's a main player in this movie is new. The only recurring characters that are very, very not integral to the plot for the most part are Amanda Waller and, of course, that mid-credit scene at the end. And there was a couple cameos in there, but I'm not going to give those away just in case you're watching this and you want to go in and not have those spoiled. I had one of them spoiled for me, and I'm not even talking about the one at the end, but Adam Smasher's relation. That was interesting to me. It sets up a lot of possibilities that we're never going to see played out on screen, but just thinking about that in my mind is great. The JSA, I love the team. They're fantastic to me. I'm not necessarily talking about this version of the team, just in general, but Dr. Fate and Hawkman in this movie, they blew it out of the water. Dr. Fate, to me, has always been far superior to Doctor Strange, and I'm only saddened because, obviously, Doctor Strange came out in the Marvel Cinematic Universe first, and most people are probably going to associate Dr. Fate with a cheap copy or a cheap ripoff of Doctor Strange, and that's not fair to me because I think Dr. Fate is far and away the superior character. Not to take anything away from Doctor Strange, and their power sets honestly aren't even that similar, but I think putting them on film, there's going to be comparisons, and they're probably going to shoot them and film them and treat them in similar ways. Not even spoiling what happens with Dr. Fate or Hawkman or any of the characters in this movie, but I would love to see them down the line. So they're an old team in universe, but they were not previously established in the movies. So I would be very interested if they may eventually go back and do some sort of prequel, if not just use them in other films or have a full-on sequel, because the Justice Society has a very eclectic roster, and I would love to see a lot more of them. This is probably the best version of Hawkman we've seen on screen, and I do need to admit, I very much love the Michael Shanks version from Smallville. That will always stay in my heart for two reasons. It was great. It was probably the first time I saw Hawkman as a realistic, non-goofy person. And also, I mean, it's Michael Shanks. Love Stargate, so obviously when he showed up on that, it's like, okay, we're done here. That's it. So those two characters were great. Cyclone had no real connection with before this, and she, to me, was the standout in this movie. She didn't have a ton to do, but just the way they filmed her power set was fantastic. Her characterization was good. She had this nice, bubbly personality, even though she hinted at her darker backstory. So I'd love to go into more depth about her. The only one I would say is probably the weakest link would be Atom Smasher. And I'm not taking anything away from the actor or how he portrayed the character, but he was playing more of the bumbling newbie, the goof, the guy who hadn't really gotten things together yet. And I'm not necessarily a huge fan of those storylines. So to me, that wasn't necessary, but he played the part well, so I'm not going to take anything away from him. So we've got the JSA built up, and then we also have this whole Black Adam storyline. Well, Teth Adam, he doesn't actually turn into Black Adam till the end of the film, name-wise at least. And that was a good setup. I like the fact that they tied this into a country that we don't know anything about in our world because it doesn't exist, Kahndaq. They didn't play on the whole fact that let's just set it in Egypt. They set up this whole country. They set up this whole terrorism angle. They brought in Intergang. They showed the whole geopolitical instability of the region with terrorism. It was great. I love that whole setup, and I thought they did a great job of just portraying this area as a real-world place, because I think if this movie does well and they move forward with this universe, this is going to be a key player on the stage in the future, possibly similar in some ways to how Wakanda is now a main player in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and that was an unknown place before. This wasn't an unknown place, but it was kind of a pay-no-mind place, and now suddenly it's going to come to prominence, and I love that fact. We had the kid, and we had his mother. Those were and then we had the comic relief who found out how he was going to die, so became brave. So the mother is supposed to be, and I don't even know if I can say this on YouTube, so apologies if something happens and this video goes away, but she's supposed to be Isis. And I don't like the fact that we're not allowed to use that term because A, it is an ancient Egyptian goddess. 2, it is a older style DC hero who even had a TV show in the 70s. So the fact that they can't even reference the name of this character or this goddess because of real-world people that have taken this name and abused it, I don't like that fact. One of my favorite moments in the entire movie is when she was trying to rescue her son and the Justice Society was ready to step up and, try and stop it and try and argue and try and fight. And Black Adam's just like, not your son, not your country. I love that. And I like the fact here that even though we were supposed to look at them like the key team of superheroes, they were sort of the outsiders and working against the political interests of the country, even though they were trying to do the right thing. So everyone in this movie was basically in some sort of moral or political gray area, and that just added a lot to it, even though it was understated and not really said out loud except for a couple of moments. The special effects in a few places were, I would say, a bit wonky, especially the main villain. And I think this is where it falls down, because there was this big MacGuffin going throughout the movie of this crown of Sabak and trying to keep it away from the bad guys and not let it fall into evil hands, blah, blah, blah. But the entire movie basically transpired before this thing actually activated, created the villain. Then there was, like a 15-minute battle, a couple huge set pieces. Without spoiling too much, a couple of characters had some very significant interactions with this character before all was said and done. There was one moment, and I think this is pointed out to me by the Popcast guys, because they love this moment as well, but I absolutely adore this moment in the movie, where a thing was happening, a certain event was happening, a shield was being lowered, an explosion was about to happen, and all of the heroes jumped into action at the same point, and they all did something different, equal to their power set. They all jumped into the fray to be a hero, and that's the type of thing I like to see. I like to see heroes being heroes, especially when it's difficult. Now, like I said, we got Amanda Waller in this movie. I think she's going to be sort of the linchpin holding this universe together. Kind of seems like I would say, I know this is a weird statement, a cross between Nick Fury and Wong. I say Nick Fury because she's got this whole governmental oversight thing. She's putting the teams together. She's got control based on political assets. But Wong, because in the last phase of the MCU, Wong just pops up everywhere. He's kind of holding everything together. He's being the glue, the linchpin of the universe. So if you combine those two characters, that's kind of what it seems like Amanda Waller is playing, at least for the time being, in the DCEU while they get their crap together. Moving on to the end credit scene, well, I guess it was a mid-credit scene. Obviously, this was spoiled for me a long time ago. I guess I wasn't 100% sure that it was actually going to appear in the movie by the time I went, but I would have to say I was 98% sure just based on all the crap online. And that's something I guess we're just going to have to deal with forever, because there's not a chance you're not going to be spoiled for something unless you're just completely off the internet or not running in circles and caring about the movies at all. And in which case, great, you're not going to be spoiled, but is it really going to mean as much to you because you're not steeped in that culture to begin with? That impact of that mid-credit scene was fantastic, but the scene itself didn't really accomplish anything. There was nothing of substance there. It was just the appearance of something making the scene worthwhile. It was made to freak you out and be like, oh my God, I can't believe I just saw that. So going in knowing about it, it's just kind of there, and it still felt great seeing it, but you didn't have that punch of, oh my God, I can't believe that just happened. I had no idea. Basically, my overall thoughts are, I really liked this movie. It's not my top tier movie from the DCEU. I still think I prefer Shazam. I still prefer Aquaman. And I probably also prefer the Zack Snyder version of the Justice League. But this might have to be my number 4. It sets up a lot. The characters are fantastic. Even a couple of the goofier characters I didn't really care about. I can't believe they did this. It's been such a joke already. The fact that they introduced a giant sky beam in this movie, and they weren't like poking at it and winking at it, that would have been one thing. I guess they thought it was a mandatory thing to do. And like I said, this whole final battle scene with Sabak, it felt like they kind of just stitched that on from an entirely different movie. I don't know if they felt like they couldn't do this movie, just having Black Adam as Black Adam and not really having an enemy, setting him up to just kind of fight the corruption, fight Intergang, come to terms with the modern world, kind of go to odds with the Justice Society, and then learn his place in this new world and take whatever he was going to take from that. I feel like they didn't trust the fact that they could make a lower stakes movie like that without throwing a galactic ending or world ending event in there for him to battle and pow, pow, punch, make the audience realize, okay, this guy can be a badass hero too. I wish they had just had the balls to make the movie without that. But it definitely felt like that was a tacked on thing, whereas the main meat of this movie was the Black Adam coming into modern day and coming to terms with himself, the world, heroes, Justice Society, being out of time, himself, his son, his family. All of these interpersonal things are great. And then you just throw a big CGI skybeam in battle with a poorly rendered demon-looking guy with similar powers. That seems like they're just throwing at the end of the movie, oh crap, we've got all these superhero tropes we need to shove in here, let's do it. If they had spent a little more time on the interpersonal relationship with the Justice Society, Black Adam, the geopolitical region, and all of that stuff, I think it would have been probably a much more divisive type of movie, because it doesn't fit that mold of the normal DC or Marvel or just superhero movie in general. But I think it could have stood alone as a very, very unique movie in this genre, and it could have been fantastic. Where it stands, I would only say this is probably, I would say an 8 out of 10. I would absolutely see it again. I think it was fun. I think it was great for what it was, but it's not going to break any records as the greatest piece of art ever. But I do think that it lends credence to the fact that this universe is still alive. We're still using the same actors. We're adding new actors, adding new blood. Like I said, Cyclone, I absolutely want to see more of her. She is definitely a new favorite from this franchise. Plus, obviously, Hawkman and Dr. Fate. But what do you think? Did you like this movie? Have you not seen it? Are you over superhero movies in general? Leave all your thoughts below. While you're down there, drop a like. And until next time, Shazam!